Hello, brother and sister. God is merciful. He chooses the least expected to reveal his truth, and in this story, he uses a blind girl to show his identity in a way the world cannot ignore. For centuries, people have argued about who Jesus really is. Some say he was just a prophet, others believe he was only a good teacher, and many have imagined him through paintings, statues, and personal ideas. But this girl, born blind, given a vision beyond this world, returns with a testimony that ends many misunderstandings and misconceptions. She does not rely on human descriptions, she speaks of what she saw with her own eyes. I will read her story in the next line. Good day, brother. My name is Cecilia Joel. My brother is helping me send this experience to you as I narrate all that I saw to him. I include my early life to point to something important. I was born into a home filled with faith and love. My parents, devoted followers of Christ, never once saw my blindness as a burden. Instead, they believed that God had a purpose for my life, and they raised me with a love so deep that I never felt lacking in anything. From my earliest days, they spoke words of life over me, assuring me that I was wonderfully made, that I was not forgotten by God. Though I could not see the world around me, I could feel their warmth, their kindness, and the unwavering presence of God in our home. As I grew older, they ensured I had the best education possible. I learned to read and write through Braille, and though the world remained dark to my physical eyes, my mind was filled with the light of knowledge. Most importantly, I learned about Jesus. I read about him in the Bible, tracing the raised dots with my fingers, imagining the stories unfolding in my mind. I had never seen his face, but I knew of him. I had heard how his image was displayed in places of worship, how paintings and sculptures depicted him, but I could never grasp what he truly looked like. One day, as we traveled together, my parents and I were in a terrible car accident. In a moment of chaos, everything around me changed. I felt myself being lifted, as if weightless, floating beyond the wreckage. As I floated beyond the accident, something strange and wonderful happened. For the first time in my life, I could see. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, but then I looked down and saw myself. I had never known what I looked like before, but now there I was. My face, my hands, my whole body, I saw it all. It was a shocking yet beautiful moment. Then, I turned and saw my parents. They were there too, but something was wrong. Their bodies looked weak, and I could tell they were leaving this world. My heart ached because I loved them so much and I didn't want to lose them. But at the same time, I felt a strange peace, like I was being held by something greater than my pain. As I looked around, I realized the world was more beautiful than I had ever imagined. The sky was brighter, the colors were richer, and the air itself felt alive. Everything had a glow like light was coming from everywhere. I had spent my life hearing about trees, rivers, and mountains, but now I saw them with my own eyes. It was more than I ever dreamed. Then, I looked at myself again. Something was different. I was no longer weak, no longer blind. My body was whole, perfect, without any flaw. The person I had become in this place was free from the struggles I had known before. I wasn't just seeing, I was complete. As I stood there, taking in the beauty around me, I suddenly felt something pulling me forward. It wasn't like hands pushing me or the wind carrying me, it was a force beyond my control, yet it felt peaceful. I wasn't afraid. It was as if I was being drawn towards something or someone who had been waiting for me. I moved without effort, gliding toward a place I didn't recognize. Then, in the distance, I saw a figure approaching. At first, I couldn't make out his face, but there was something powerful about his presence. He walked with a calm and steady grace, and though I had never seen him before, my heart instantly knew this was Jesus. No one had to tell me. I just knew. It was as if every story I had ever read about him, every prayer I had whispered, and every moment I had felt his presence in my life all came together in this one moment. He wasn't just a name in a book anymore, he was real, standing before me. As Jesus came closer, I realized something surprising. He did not look like the paintings or statues I had heard about. He was not the soft, pale figure with golden hair that many described. He was stronger, more powerful, and more real than any image I had ever imagined. His hair was white like wool, flowing down gently, and his eyes burned like fire, not with anger, but with a deep, endless love. His skin had the rich, warm glow of bronze, shining as if it carried the light of heaven itself. He wore a long robe, pure and bright, with a golden sash across his chest. Every part of him radiated glory, yet he did not seem distant or untouchable. Instead, he felt closer than anyone I had ever known. His presence was overwhelming, but not in a way that made me afraid. The moment I saw him, I was surrounded by perfect love, complete peace, and a power beyond anything I could describe. It was as if he carried the very heartbeat of creation, and yet, he looked at me with kindness, as if I was the only one in the world at that moment. As I stood before Jesus, I felt no need to speak. He already knew everything about me. He looked into my eyes, not just the eyes that had once been blind, but into the depths of my soul. Then, he revealed something that changed everything. My blindness was never a mistake. All my life, I had wondered why I was born without sight. I had accepted it with faith, but now Jesus himself was telling me that my condition had a purpose. He had been with me through every moment, using my life as a testimony of his glory. Even in my darkest times, he had never left me. My blindness was not a punishment or an accident, it was part of a greater plan. Then, he spoke of what he desires for every person. He does not look at their struggles, weaknesses, or differences. He calls every soul to seek him, to know him, and to follow him. He longs for people to come to him, not because of religion, but because of love. Finally, he showed me something greater than anything I could have imagined. Those who trust him and walk in his ways will receive a reward far beyond this world. It is not riches, fame, or comfort, but something eternal, a crown of life, given by God himself. This crown is for the faithful, those who love him, and those who hold on to him no matter what they face. At that moment, I understood, my life had always been in his hands, and my future was secure in him. As I stood before Jesus, understanding filled my heart like never before. He showed me that throughout history, people have tried to reach God in their own ways. They built religions, created rules, and performed rituals, believing that these things would bring them closer to him. But all of it was man's effort, people searching, reaching, and hoping to find the way. Then, Jesus revealed the truth, God had already made a way. Instead of man reaching for God, God had come down to man. Jesus himself was the path, the only way to the Father. No religion, no good deeds, no traditions could replace what he had done. He was not just a great teacher or a prophet, he was the Son of God, sent to save the world. I saw the depth of his sacrifice. He had left heaven, walked the earth, and suffered for the sins of all people. He had been rejected, beaten, and crucified, not because he had to, but because he loved us. His blood was the price that paid for our redemption, and his resurrection proved that death had no power over him. At that moment I understood. Knowing Jesus was not about following a religion, it was about having a relationship with him. He was the bridge between God and man, and through him alone, salvation was found. As I stood before Jesus, he looked into my eyes, not just at me, but deep into my soul. In that moment, time itself seemed to stand still. A great peace surrounded me, yet I could feel something powerful happening. Then, without a word, he showed me something I never expected. I saw myself, not as I was now, but as I would be 10 years into the future. It was as if I had stepped forward in time, watching my own life unfold before me. I saw things I could not fully explain, things too precious to share with anyone else. It was not just about what would happen, but about who I would become. The vision was clear, yet I knew it was meant only for me. Whatever lay ahead, it was a promise, a glimpse of what was to come. I didn't need to understand everything at that moment. I only knew that Jesus had shown it to me for a reason, and that was enough. Suddenly everything changed. The bright, beautiful world around me faded, and I felt myself being pulled back. Voices echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. My body felt heavy, weak, and in pain. Then I realized I was back. I could hear the urgent voices of paramedics rushing around me, trying to save my life. But as I opened my eyes, I saw nothing. The darkness had returned. My sight, which had been given to me for a brief moment, was gone again. Yet I did not feel sorrow. I had seen what others had not. I had stood before Jesus, and I knew what awaited me. My blindness was not the end of my story. A promise had been placed inside me, a future I had glimpsed, a truth I now carried. After everything I had seen, I knew I could not keep silent. God had given me this experience for a reason, not just for myself, but for others. I had to tell the world what I had witnessed. My life was proof that God is real, that Jesus is alive, and that He calls every person to know Him. I had once lived in darkness, both physically and spiritually, but now I understood what true sight meant. It was not just about seeing with my eyes but seeing with my heart, knowing the truth and walking in it. There was no time to waste. Faith was not something to put off for later. I had seen the reality beyond this world, and I knew that eternity was real. Jesus is calling everyone, men, women, and children, to seek Him now, before it was too late. No one could come to God through religion or good works alone, only through Jesus could anyone be saved. I made a promise that day. I would live my life serving God, not just in words, but in spirit and truth. I would tell others of His love, His sacrifice, and the hope He offers to all who believe in Him. My blindness did not limit me, if anything, it became my greatest testimony. I would walk by faith, trusting in the promise Jesus had shown me, until the day I would see again. Thank you, sir.